Okay, I suppose we have you all. So technically we can start, but maybe we wait a while for other participants to come to have the audience to our uh, meaningful, non-boring, and significant presentations today. Okay, I'm very happy to have sociological session, yeah, because I have always this feeling that sociology, social sciences, except for psychology, is neglected in boredom studies, and not only in boredom studies, I suppose, yeah, which was, I suppose, visible, apparent in the title, International Handbook of Boredom Studies, yeah, and content was almost purely psychological. Yeah, maybe this presents the statistics in boredom studies. Okay, I can admit it, but still, it would be nice to include other humanities, social sciences as well. So I'm always eager to have these sociological sessions that we from social sciences, except psychology, have always meaningful things to say about boredom. Not only boredom, but in this particular case, it will be boredom. Okay, uh, okay, we still have the same number of people. Okay, so maybe we can start. Maybe there will be some technical problems. I hope not, but still, so there will be time to amend all those problems. Okay, so welcome you officially and the second day of our Boredom Conference with us, wonderful presenters with wonderful, very interesting topics, and I hope that everything will go smoothly. I mean, technical issues will be okay, and that we will have wonderful discussions as well. Okay, so let's start with our first presenter, Joydip Dutta. Please start sharing your screen, okay, and I will introduce shortly. Um, so Joydip completed PhD at the School of Development Studies in Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, India, and his PhD thesis was titled "Understanding the Being of the Refugee Camp Concept and its Form." And he also wrote MA thesis on similar subject, yeah, titled "Understanding Camp Life: Everyday Practice and Politics of Lower Caste Refugee in West Bengal." So he is a scholar of history and development studies, and his theoretical interest pertains to phenomenology and hermeneutics dimension of phenomenology. Yeah, and now
Yeah,
yeah, can you share your screen or something? Yeah, do you have a
I
presentation
don't
or?
I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, so I like to read my paper. So it is uh,
Okay,
uh, I don't have a kind of this sharing screen or something.
okay,
So
and it will be about the profound boredom of refugee camp. So yeah, we will continue with profound boredom today, and now we have empirical sociological case. Yeah,
yeah.
so the floor is
First
yours.
of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity. The title of this paper, The Profound Boredom and Refugee Camp, Exploring Indeterminateness, Emptiness, and Silence. This paper engaged with the concept of profound boredom and silence from Martin Heidegger's point of view, showing how profound boredom conveys the structure of discourse in refugee camp, with specific reference post-partition West Bengal, India. Actually, the Heidegger suddenly comes in this paper. Actually, by beginning, it is a continuation of my doctoral thesis, and my departure was from Giorgio Agamben, whose articulation of refugee camp and space. Apart from his text, the Homo sacer or state of exception. I was more focused on his method, particularly the book Signature of All Things on Method and Open, the Man and Animal. Specifically, Open, the Man and Animal, Agamben mainly focus on post-historical humanities perspective, and there is a chapter that profound boredom, which he like to see, that is animal captivation, and he is more rely on Heidegger. So Heidegger comes through the Agamben in this paper. The concept of boredom is considered philosophically as a structural movement of being left empty and being held in limbo, which is limited by extrinsic circumstances, and time becomes long in boredom. However, in the fundamental concept of metaphysics, world, finitude, and solitude, Heidegger explicates three forms of boredom that arise specifically out of things themselves. Heidegger explicates the three forms of the first two forms of boredom, becoming bored by and being bored with, occur in a particular situation. But the third form, profound boredom, it is boring for one, is indeterminate and unfamiliar, and it is difficult to determine any particular situation in which boredom occurs. However, profound boredom is a fundamental attunement of contemporary design, and Heidegger referred it to this fundamental attunement as appearing through the proper awaiting of the other. It is hence the profound boredom that reveals itself in its essence and time, and is considered a substantial guiding thread to its two structural movement of being left empty and being held in limbo. The phenomena of refugee camp are generally taken to be spatially bounded with demarcated border, contained refugee, overcrowding, a lack of privacy, and definitive rules and regulation govern refugees' life. The life of the refugee is considered not what they were, not what they will become, and not part of surrounding society, but rather a situation in which past is no more and future is not yet. It is therefore projected as limbo in terms of refugee being stuck in between, whereas life and situation are perceived as a precarious and model of uncertainty. Michel Aisgard pointed out that existence of refugee camp is, is the manifestation of an immediate present, but at the same time, it refers to the absence of positive presence of the outside and a recognizable homeland. Hence, the reality of the camp illuminates a certain kind of emptiness or isolation. There are two aspects of refugee camp that may be considered part of the comprehensive understanding of refugee life and are derived from the content of forcefully displaced person under precarious condition. First, the building of refugee camp explicates an uncertain situation that refugees have without a past, no agency, and distancing of certain populations. Second, the spatial arrangement is temporal until the refugee settlement settle permanently, and it provides an indeterminate position where they neither inhabit their past nor have a permanent present. Now, one of the central assumptions here is that the reality of the refugee camp is represented on the basis of its functional aspect, guided by paradoxical and temporal character. There are four basic characteristics of life that are driving from function of the refugee camp. The refugee life is characterized by a limited amount of support payment. Next, and the inability to finding paid work living according to the government choice of residency and minimum geographical mobility. In West Bengal, the refugee camp were divided into three different categories: the transit camp, worksite camp, and colony camp, which were built primarily after partition of India 1947 for the refugees from East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, to West Bengal. In addition to these three categories, there were a permanent rehabilitation institute, also known as PL camp, and women's camp, which were separately regulated. All these three types of refugee camp were initially controlled by the government of India through Refugee Relief and Rehabilitation Department. Despite this, there is a common trait between all types of refugee camp in West Bengal. First, the temporal belonging of the refugee. Second, the undeterminate waiting for permanent rehabilitation. And finally, an uncertain future regarding the possibility of finding their home. Bulent Dicent and Lisensen refers the refugees in the camp as a completely isolate from public life, from non-space place position, and is of the opinion that refugee camps are perfect materialization of a fear of touching created by its very architectural design, anti-urban ideal, and image of order. In other words, they interpret the refugee camp as completely isolated and uncertain, and it unfolds a kind of fear from its very foundational core. The demarcated border, limited freedom of movement, definite rules on who is included and who is excluded, a limited amount of support payment, punishment, overcrowding, overwhelming hunger, disease, and death are giving us significance and phenomenal importance of fear and elucidate the threats of refugee face a strange situation objectively. Now, in this context, to bring about uncertainty and isolation of this environmental situation, the phenomena of fear appear to miss its objective aspect of threat. It we stand to bear witness to fear in the face of something threatening and at the same time address a malaise condition that poses a different form of fear. However, profound boredom, which for Heidegger is the emptiness and profound attunement, is rooted in the concealed destination of modernity. His articulation, profound boredom that occur in a fundamental mode of anxiety against, illuminates a different form of fear and suggests indeterminately the possibility of design. This indeterminateness of fear presumes a limited scope to speak, and Heidegger comprehends that in the face of anxiety, all utterance of individual fall under silence. His redemption, this telling refusal, is in a consonance of indeterminate the possibility of Dasein, and such refusal ultimately affirm being held in limbo. Yet, profound boredom is not simply perceived emptiness as the absence of particular being or dissatisfaction of things like bored with or bored by, but rather being evolve as a absence of particular being and uh, just a minute, evolve in a different and made known by refusal to do and act. This telling refusal or being evolved in indifference is supposed to not speak about them, and silence became deeper in the context of profound boredom. As we have seen above, the two different forms of fear are associated with the function of refugee camp. In the first form, fear is related to environmental condition, that is rule, regulations, which create an unfamiliar situation. And second form, fear is associate with the indeterminate possibility of the refugees of unending waiting in the camp. This unending waiting is nothing more than indeterminacy or something not covering any definite things, and refugees are struck by anxiety in the standing now of the camp. Yet, in a certain way, one might argue that temporal confinement and undetermined waiting have nothing to offer any future possibility and thus provide a kind of emptiness where the suspension of possibility reveal profound boredom, shaped by the fundamental attunement of fear. Now, two forms of fear are tied to disclose the temporal environmental condition, which is further by exploring discourse of the refugee camp. Silence is considered a component of our comprehensive understanding of boredom. And here it is driving for indeterminate boring things and telling refusal of design. Heidegger's methodological principle of profound boredom affirmed the absence of passing the time and consider it a temporary horizon which is stressed on quote unquote now, such as a span of time during which this profound boredom persists. In other words, Heidegger's assign profound boredom neither to the present nor merely the past or future. Rather, Dazai's unarticulate unity of its horizon. However, profound boredom, the attunement appeared to have taken place in fundamental mode of anxiety, that is, being with no hold on things, and indeterminate phase of fear and concealing a strange situation with respect to indeterminacy. In the being of time, Heidegger provides an existential basis to interpret the discourse as he sees it and as an unarticulate articulation of intelligibility, and comprehends that the call of conscience is directed towards design potentiality for being and often induce a mode of discourse. His exegesis of this call give the fact of constantly being guilty, which is not uttering anything, but rather being guilty belongs to reticence and endorse silence. Hence, the telling refusal of profound boredom or reticence of discourse in being and time pertain to silence. It seems to articulate intelligibility, and Heidegger designate it as discourse. In the context of camp, silence is seen to have become a phenomenal ground in the everyday life of refugee, and in more about and it is more about doing nothing or their emptiness in temporal condition, such as the work of Isabella Wagner and Marcus Frankenstein, who is sharing, that have directed their attention to the role of bored refugee and comments on silence and half sleepy mode that are foremost in the that are foremost in the camp. Although they are focused on the Southern European reception camp, the phenomenal significance of boredom and reflection of silence is evident in the refugee camp in the subcontinent India, specifically West Bengal. Profullo Chakraborty, his one of the seminal work, Marginal Man, who considered nakedness, hunger, death are fundamental to the refugee camp, depicts boredom and condition that cease to be human, and reveal the refugee as doing nothing. He gives a detailed account on everyday life of an inmate, and according to him, the life began with a long and painful waiting. Wait for water pot in hand in a queue for one of the 80 improvised latrine for about 70,000 peoples in Cooper's camp, that is second largest transit camp in West Bengal. Then suddenly Upendra, a metaphoric character, found he had nothing to do until lunchtime. He could not go out of the camp except with a permission from the commandant. So Upendra would not know what to do in the interval between 1 a.m. to 2 p.m. And when he took his midday meal of a plate of rice, lentil paste, and potato, there is another long interval of 6 hours between midday meal to evening meal at 8 p.m. And he comments the time passing in idleness. It is therefore that life in the camp provide an empty condition, which is nothing but waiting in an unfamiliar environment, and it corresponds in an indeterminate possibility of finding permanent rehabilitation. This waiting significant and attainment that refers to indeterminateness and marked refugee idealness or indifference, which may be interpreted as a refusal of to speak and represent silent. The phenomena of silence, however, is derived here from profound boredom because it appeared through emptiness and in limbo, which is generally attributed to refusal to do anything or act. It happened within the context of discourse because keeping silent of refugee is an attunement of anxiety and illuminates not speak about them or in the word as the voice, which is likely to be soundless saying and involve covering of the discourse of refugee camp. Hence, keeping silence does not imply the refugees are dumb or unable to articulate the strange or paradoxical character of the refugee camp, but rather it is attunement and articulation of intelligibility. The possibility of silence here is expressed in terms of refugees' understanding of their environmental condition, and it manifests everyday discourse through gossiping and reticence in the camp. Thank you. This is now.
Thank you very much. You're perfect with time. Thank you. We are continuing this reflection over boredom in total institutions. Yeah. Yesterday we said about mental hospitals, or at least we discussed the comments section. Yeah, prison. Yeah, you said commandant. Yeah, commandante. This is like a prison. Yeah, and this is what we with Professor Wagner also in our paper mentioned. But my question is a bit different. You used this Heidegger's perspective, this concept of profound boredom, and I have one doubt about this, because profound boredom in Heidegger is emancipating. It is a positive state, yeah, that we should want to have, yeah, to reach our design, to understand our being in time, in the world, in cosmos, and so on. So this is emancipatory. So uh, so why associated this positive, profound boredom Heideggerian concept with something that ultimately, I suppose, is not positive.
It is difficult to say that it is positive or negative, but if we look into the discourse of the refugee camp, then we can, and their language, that particular type of language and voice that indicates their particular spatial and temporal condition. That is particularly the point most of the refugee scholars are pointed out, that is temporal existence, where kind of emptiness. And this temporality is not a kind of negative sense, that is they are kind of inactive. If we look into the refugee politics or their struggle or unity, they are always have a kind of positive understanding about the contemporary situation. So in that sense, I am trying to understand the earlier I said the Agamben's propositions of animal captivation, and what Agamben is trying to understand the unconcealedness of animal captivation. But I am furthering the Agamben to introduce Heidegger's boredom and silence through the recent text that is by Wanda Teros Gregory, speaking of silence in Heidegger. In this first chapter, mainly, he is focusing on the profound boredom and silence. And through this idea, I trying to interpret and further in the Agamben's concept of profound boredom and animal captivation in a positive lens.
Mhm.
Also, it is also true that refugee camp all are not same, and also camp and refugee camp and detention camp also different, because at present I am working on the different detention camp, particularly in India detention camp, which is quite different phenomena, where speaking and kind of unity is impossible because they are criminalized. But the refugees who has come from partition, they are not criminal. But nowadays, refugees or illegal immigrants, they are criminalized through this process. So this, and they are concentrated in the camp. So this camp also quite different than the refugee camp.
Mhm. Okay. This is what just strikes me. Yeah, this positivity, this profound boredom is something present in the camps. Okay, Jimena had the comment here about this temporality, yeah, because this is our being in time, but this could be a torment, yeah, that it lasts too long, yeah. We are in this limbo, this is limbo state, yeah. We are in between states. We cannot engage, yeah. We
Hmm.
are out of home, but we are not at home,
At home.
not only in the world, but in this new place. So we are indeterminate. Our situation is that indeterminate,
Hmm.
uh, and this is not quite good, I suppose.
That's why I mentioned that two form of fear that function in the refugee camp. First form of fear, that is comes from the environmental structure, the way the camp is constructed. That is, you have a there is a rules, regulations, and there is a daily routine. And if you violate, then you punish. And another form of fear, that is I found that refugee camps is there, that is the indeterminate, the possibility about their permanent rehabilitation. And lots of refugees, they are saying that we have nothing to do, because this whole condition is we are kind of empty, because we don't have a kind of family, we don't have a kind of relation, others, or we are kind of stuck in between. So this two form of fear actually I saw very prominent in the refugee camp. And profound boredom, and the profound boredom, that is suspension of the possibility of future. That's profound boredom comes in that point, right? So silent actually, uh, through that kind of condition, keep silence is the authentic way to exist in the camp. And that is not that they are ill or they are inactive. Rather, they are try to this silence is try to articulate about the structure of the camp. And when the resistance of the camp occur, that occurrence through that kind of understanding and unity of the camp, if we look into the unity of the camp, there is a not kind of ideological unity. Unity comes in a certain event, and through the event the unity occur, and this the resistance happen. That is the existential phenomena in the refugee camp. And I am trying to outline here through this presentation the actual how discourse and existence happen in the camp. And it is refugee camp, not detention camp, actually.
Hmm. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have any additional question? Okay, you're still free to make some comments in the comment section.